Hello everyone, this is Mrs. K. We've got a really fun, exciting day ahead of us. At least I hope you guys enjoy it. This YouTube video is going to be in 3 parts. You are required, as a minimum, to watch at least all of part 1. It's going to end around 10 minutes. I'll have that timestamp on Haiku for you. Part 1 is going to go over the very bare minimum you need to do your homework, but I highly encourage you to watch part 1 and part 2. Part 1 and Part 2 will total in around 20 minutes. I'll have that timestamp on Haiku as well, and I'll make a note of it within the YouTube video. So Part 1 is going to teach you the very bare minimum. Part 2 is going to go into more detail and make your homework a lot more easy to do. And then Part 3 is by no means required at all. It's just if you have time and you want to have fun and see a Mr. and Miss K adventure, you could go ahead and do that. Well, anyways, let's get started. Alright, so today we're going to go over some very basic tree identification. We're going to show you key features and how to distinguish deciduous trees. Deciduous trees are the kinds of trees that lose their leaves annually. Deciduous meaning tending to fall off, so that's indicating their leaves that fall off every year. We're not going to talk about evergreens. Evergreens are trees that keep their needles and stay green all year round. Examples of evergreens could be like pine trees, fir trees, spruce trees, trees you turn into Christmas trees, etc. So after that, we're going to want you to go outside and take some selfies or pictures, bring some family members, bring your dogs, have fun with it, and you'll take pictures to demonstrate some of the things we taught, as well as make some basic observations. And again, this video will be in 3 parts. Part 1 will be about 10 minutes. That is what you have to watch. If you want to do a little bit better on your homework, then we encourage you to watch Part 1 and Part 2, totaling about 20 minutes. Again, not required, but highly suggested. And then Part 3 is just for fun if you're interested in it. So this assignment is going to be due at Monday, May 18th at 10 a.m. Here's a disclaimer. This assignment asks you to go outside, so obviously you need to pay attention to your surroundings and, look both ways when crossing the street and other common sense things. But also, we're obviously in a pandemic right now, so when going outside, maintain social distancing. Wear a mask if you're going to be walking near lots of people or in areas where staying 6 feet away from other people is difficult. When Mr. K and I went out to do some plant identification today, we were not wearing a mask, but we also only ran into just one person along our whole walk, and we just went to the other side of the street instead of getting anywhere near that person. So please just make smart, intelligent decisions for you as well as for other people. So otherwise, go outside, be in nature, and have fun. And I just want you guys to know that you could be in nature in a city too. If we were in class right now, I would literally just be taking you outside around a few blocks around campus and be teaching you all sorts of different tree and plant species because nature is everywhere and it's fun. So we all know what trees are. It's a tall thing with bark and leaves, and it makes oxygen for us. How convenient. But trees come in many shapes and sizes. Their leaves also differ in size and shape. So take a look at this image and just see how, some trees are round, some trees are short and spreading, some trees are tall and narrow. But then even then, if you look at their leaves, there's just so many different shapes and varieties that make them all different. So we know there's a lot of tree species out there, but how do you tell them all apart? You may know what an oak tree is, or maybe a maple tree, but can you tell apart the various kinds of oaks or maples? Did you even know there were different kinds of oaks or maples? Well, today you'll learn. In the top left image, you'll see different kinds of oak tree leaves. They all have their own unique shape, their own unique features that help people distinguish them to know what species they are. Same with the bottom left image, which shows various types of maple leaves. The bottom left maple leaf there is a Japanese maple. It's a very beautiful ornamental tree that you'll see in a lot of people's landscaping. But you'll also see the bottom right maple leaf there, which is a silver maple in people's yards, but it occurs naturally in the wild as well. And today we're going to show you the basic key features in identifying trees, and then show you some common trees you'll find locally here around Indiana. Alright, so in order for people to identify trees and their various types, they typically follow about 3 steps. We're going to go over those 3 steps today. So the first step is step 1, and that's figuring out if the branching is opposite or alternate. So what you need to do is you look at the tree and see how its branches or twigs kind of branch off. All right, try avoid looking at the trunk and the bigger branches and look at the tinier branches. The tree for the most part will have either an opposite or alternate branching pattern. So if you look at the image on the left, you'll see an example of opposite branching. So in opposite branching, it's when the twigs or the smaller branches branch off at the same points, opposite of each other, either creating a V or a T. So if you see with my little cursor, I'm going to draw in a V on these branches to show that the twigs are coming off opposite each other in a V. But sometimes you'll also see them kind of coming out horizontal, still opposite, but in a T pattern. And then there's also alternate, and that's where branches stagger or alternate back and forth at different intervals of branches of the tree. So you're not going to see, twigs coming off at the same place opposite of each other. You're going to see twigs coming off at alternate intervals along the branch. So now I want you to look at this little digital tree below those two examples, and I want you to pause the video for a second and figure out if this is an example of opposite or alternate. Hopefully you've paused the video and figured it out, but the answer of this is opposite, because every time that there's a new branching pattern, it's coming off in intervals that are opposite of each other, creating V's all along the tree. So this is an opposite branching tree. I want to make a note here. Nature is not perfect. Some trees, twigs fall off, making parts of it look alternate instead of opposite. So you need to look at a few branches and look at overall trends. The one branch that you pull down might have a lot of damage and it's hard to distinguish. So you just kind of need to look at the tree overall and see what the major pattern is there. All right, so let's get some practice determining on if branching is opposite or alternate. All right, so the image below shows some sort of a tree, and I'd like you to figure out if it's alternate branching or opposite branching. Look at how the branches stem off of each other, how the twigs stem off of each other. Take a moment to pause this video and look at the tree. So hopefully you've paused the video because I'm going to give you the answer now. This tree is opposite branching. You can see that how the tree's branching pattern is they're always opposite of each other. I've drawn in several V's to demonstrate this. Of course, nature isn't perfect. Sometimes twigs, break off and make it look like it's alternate branching, but the main key here is looking at the majority of the branches. You're seeing a major trend of opposite branching, therefore this tree's opposite. Now I'd like you to look at this tree. Again, take a moment to pause it if you need to, but I want you to determine if it's opposite or alternate. If you've paused it, congratulations, because I'm going to go over the answer now. And here I've drawn in more lines to kind of demonstrate the branching pattern on this tree. You could see that the branching pattern is alternate. You don't really see little twigs coming off at the same spot opposite of each other. You're seeing them kind of going off in like weird zigzag kind of patterns. Therefore, this is an alternate tree branching. All right, so we now know that step 1 is figuring out the branching pattern of the tree. Is it opposite or is it alternate? Well, step 2 is to look at the leaf shape. First thing you need to really know is the leaf anatomy terminology. So we've got a leaf here on the far left. It's got a petiole, that's the part that attaches to the tree branch, and that petiole attaches to the vein structure of the leaf. All right, the leaf itself has sinuses. These are inlets or grooves within the leaf, and then it's got lobes, which are the pointy bits. Within the leaf, it also has a margin, and the margin is like, what is the edging looking like? Is it smooth? Does it have teeth? We'll talk about that a little bit more later. Okay, so the first thing to kind of look at when you're looking at leaves is it a simple leaf? Is it literally just, a basic, normal looking generic leaf? Is it palmately compound? So palmately compound shows an entire or a whole leaf here. So this is one leaf with individual leaflets. So palmately compound means it's got leaflets that stem out from one centralized spot. kind of like the palm of your hand. Your fingers, your digits all come out from that one centralized palm or spot. Then we've got pinnately compound. This again is one leaf with several leaflets on it. And pinnately compound means that there's several leaflets coming off along the base of the stem of the leaf. And then there's bipinnately compound, which is like pinnately compound times 2. It's a little bit more complicated, but don't worry about that one for now. So another thing that you look at with leaves are what are the leaf margins. Margin, again, if you look over here, is like how is the leaf outside shaped? Is it smooth and entire like this leaf here? There's no edges, it's just a very soft outside. Is it toothed or serrate? You know, where there's big teeth along the outsides or the margin of the leaves? Is it lobed? Does it have several like divots or lobes within the leaf to give it a nice unique shape? Is it doubly toothed or double serrated, where you're seeing like several teeth along each kind of, it's hard to draw, but each like, you know, big lobe area? Are you seeing several teeth along every lobe? So there's a lot of different things that make every tree or every type of tree species leaf unique from each other and allows you to kind of narrow things down. So then we have step 3, looking at the bark. So not all trees are just, you know, brown, same looking, boring bark. If you actually pay attention to the different tree species, you'll start to notice different nuances between each kinds of tree. So you might notice that a tree has smooth bark, like a beech tree, or horizontal lenticels, like a birch tree, or broken ridges like an oak tree. So the more you get used to the trees, the more distinct they start looking. In fact, like obviously people might need to identify trees in winter. Well, deciduous trees don't have their leaves in winter, so they literally need to identify their trees based on just the branching and the look of the bark. I actually got really good at doing this in my old job. I was able to figure out all the different kinds of oaks and hickories and maples just by looking at the bark. So it's kind of the more familiar you are with it, the more you use it, the better you get. Alright, so earlier I mentioned there was a point within this PowerPoint or within this YouTube video where you could stop. That's technically right now. So if you hate this lesson, could not care any less about tree identification, you could in theory stop watching this video. Your homework would be a little bit harder, but I think you could still probably figure it out. However, the next few slides would make your life a lot easier, okay? And after these next few slides, I'll let you know again that this might be a convenient stopping place for you to go and do your homework, all right? But at the very bare minimum, you could stop now. All right, so the next following slides will go over some common tree species you see in the Indianapolis area. It by no means includes all the trees you may find, just some common ones that you see. I also tried to avoid a bunch of like invasive or not normal trees. There are hundreds of tree species and thousands of tree varieties, and people have been breeding many tree varieties and hybrids of trees for long times to have specific fall colorations, flowers, flower color, etc. But if you want to learn more and try to identify specific tree species instead of just knowing the basic steps of tree identification, please keep going. All right, so you're looking at a tree, you're noticing that it has mostly opposite branching. Well, that's lucky for you because there's only a handful of trees that have opposite branching. So you might be looking at something like maple trees, ash, dogwood, buckeye, and then there's this family called Caparaceae, which is kind of a pain in the butt. But of maple trees, there's 3 really common varieties, and I'll try to teach you the nuances of each of the ones. The first one being the silver maple. And silver maples have really deep sinuses. So remember, sinuses are like these grooves between the lobes. So it's a very deep sinus there. All right. This leaf also has teeth along its margins. So you're seeing teeth along the margins of it. Also, if you were to flip over a silver maple leaf, it would have like a silver sheen on the bottom of it. And that's really what gives it its name, silver maple, is because of that silver sheen. So if you're seeing a deep sinus and toothed and a shiny silverish underside, you've got a silver maple. So let's move on to the next one. Then there's sugar maple. So if you have a leaf that really reminds you of the leaf on the Canadian flag, and Canada reminds you of maple syrup, and syrup is sweet, just like sugar, well, it's a sugar maple. Some nuances for the sugar maple leaf is its sinuses tend to be curved, okay? Not V-shaped, but curved. This isn't the best image, but you could see here that they've kind of got U-shapes or curved sinuses. They're not very deep, but they're curved. Also, the margin of the leaf doesn't have any teeth on it. So notice that these margins have no teeth on them. So if the leaf kind of reminds you of the Canadian flag, there's no teeth on it, and it's got U-shaped sinuses, then it's a sugar maple. Last common maple that I'm going to teach you guys today is red maple. So a red maple has a V-shaped sinus. So notice how this is more dramatically V-shaped rather than U-shaped or curved like on the sugar maple. So you can see these dramatic V shapes. But then the leaf margins on the sides of the leaf, there's teeth there. So we don't really have a deep sinus. It's actually shallow. That sinus is V-shaped and it's toothed. So this is a red maple, and they have very pretty red coloration in the fall. So those are the three types of maples. Then we're going to move on to ash trees. So ash trees have opposite branching, and then they've got a whole leaf here, and it's a pinnately compound leaf, kind of like what we learned a few slides ago, where with ash trees they have whole leaves that have 7 to 9 leaflets per leaf. So you can see on this image it's got its 7 leaflets on it. Then we'll move on to dogwood trees. Dogwood trees, again, have opposite branching. They tend to be a shorter tree unless they're very, very old. They have very pretty 4-petaled blooms on them. They're currently blooming right now. They're either going to be pink or white. And then they've got very, simple, boring looking leaves, but they come out opposite of each other. All right. Then the last opposite tree that we're going to talk about is a buckeye. And a buckeye is, again, one of those compound leaves. It's the palmately compounded leaf because there is 5 leaflets that come out of one centralized point. Okay? You might be familiar with the common Indiana dessert, the buckeyes, the chocolate surrounded by, or peanut butter surrounded by chocolate. Well, it kind of gets its name from these seeds here, and these seeds are called buckeyes because they kind of look like the eye of a buck or a deer or something weird like that. Then we've got alternate trees. So you've determined that the tree has alternate branching, so therefore you could be looking at a whole variety of these trees. All right, so there might be walnut trees, and this is a very long leaf, and that very long leaf has over 10 leaflets on it. All right, so it's easy to distinguish from the ash tree because it's got alternate branching, and it's also got way more leaflets on it. Then we've got oak trees, with the little acorns and everything else. So there's, depending on the leaf size or the leaf shape, you could determine which kind of oak it is. Unfortunately, oak trees are kind of late to wake up in spring, so they're barely leafing out right now. Right now there's a lot of maples with leaves out. There's a lot of eastern redbuds with leaves out. So oak trees right now might be hard to distinguish. Then we've got sweet gum trees. These guys in the fall have spiky, ouchy seed pods. I call them spiky cherries, all right? So they've got a very distinct seed pod, pain in the butt to walk on and to mow over, but they have a very unique star-like shape of their leaves. Very pretty star-like shape with very tiny teeth on the margins of the leaf, and in the fall they have the most beautiful coloration. That's the only saving grace for this tree. They turn purple, they turn yellow, orange, red, burgundy. They have just the coolest rainbow coloration ever, but they've got those nasty ouchy seeds. Then we've got our state tree of Indiana, which is the tulip tree. It's got a very distinctive, like, tulip shaped leaf shape, and that's why they call it the tulip tree. a few more alternate branching trees and some very distinct alternate branching trees. The first one being a beech tree. It's got very smooth, light colored bark, so very distinctive bark. It's also got a pretty unique leaf shape. It's obviously it's the boring leaf shape, but its teething arrangement along the margins is pretty cool and unique. So the tree overall has smooth bark, and the leaves in the fall turn this pretty golden color, and they actually hang on to their leaves all winter until spring comes and the new leaves grow out. So they're a very distinct tree, because if you're driving along and during the middle of the winter, you could be like, oh, that's a lot of gold leaves still attached to a tree. Well, that's a beech tree. Then we've got sycamore trees, and these guys have really big leaves. You could see the image of the leaf next to some guy's shoe. They kind of look like maple leaves, but they're just a lot bigger. And they also have very distinctive bark as well. The bark kind of looks sick, but the tree is fine and normal. So the bark kind of looks gray, like it's falling off, and the farther up you look on the tree, the more white it kind of appears. They also have a unique seed pod that kind of looks like cherries as well, but they're not really spiky, and if you were to start picking them apart, you'd have a lot of like cotton-like substance flying everywhere with little seeds in it. We have one of these on here on campus right outside, so it might be really familiar to you. Then we've got another tree that should be familiar to you on here on campus, and that is the ginkgo tree. The ginkgo tree is a really cool tree because it's like one of the last remaining trees from like the dinosaur era, and it's also unique because it has male and female individuals. So most plants are hermaphrodites. They have male parts and they have female parts, but the ginkgo tree has specifically male tree and a specific female tree. So the males will pollinate the female flowers, and then eventually the females will have fruits. Well, if you ever recognized a horrible stinking stench in fall on here in campus, that is because of all the rotting fruits from the female ginkgo tree that is on campus. So even though this tree is cool and unique looking, and it has beautiful golden coloration in the fall, if you would like one in your yard, I highly recommend you specifically buy a male tree. Another distinctive tree specifically for its bark is birch trees. So the bark is very distinctive. It's white, it's gray, it's peely. It's just really cool and unique looking. And its leaf is also kind of different looking than other trees as well. So it's very pointed. It's got a lot of teeth along it. It's pretty cool. So within the alternate branching group of trees, you'll run into a lot of generic leaves. All right, leaves that just look like any 3-year-old's idea or drawing of what a leaf looks like. All right, so unfortunately, these are very hard to ID based on just the leaves without looking at the overall tree shape, the bark, the flower, the leaf buds, etc. But if you're just seeing like a generic leaf, it might be a Bradford pear. The images to the top left are examples of that. It's a non-native / invasive, and yeah, they're kind of nasty. They bloomed a few weeks ago. They have really pretty flowers. They kind of stink. Mr. K and I are very allergic to them. We don't like them. Another kind that it could be is a type of apple or crabapple tree. These are the images to the right of this slide. They come in lots and lots of varieties, different kinds of flower shapes, different kinds of flower colors, but they tend to have like a short, normal looking leaf with teeth on the edge. And then you could also be finding a cherry tree, which again comes in lots of varieties. They have similar flowers to the crabapple trees, but their leaves tend to be longer and skinnier. Alright, so this slide has nothing to do with trees, but I think it's got some information that every person should just generally know. So this is poison ivy, the 3 images on the left. So it's very kind of distinct in the fact that the leaves come in 3s, always comes in 3s. The leaves have like a very kind of distinct margin on them. They're usually the bottom leaves are usually mitten shaped like this. Alright. So you could see the mitten shape there, and then the middle leaf usually has a thumb and a pinky mitten hole, something like that. All right, so something else that is typically on poison ivy, but not always, is they have a red stem. So you could see in the circled images there that they have a red stem here, but they don't always have it. So if you see these leaf shapes in sets of 3s, with or without a red stem, maybe stay away from it. Something that is commonly mistaken for poison ivy, but is not poison ivy and does not cause skin issues, is something called the Virginia creeper. It's similar to poison ivy because it kind of grows on the ground and as a vine and up trees, just like poison ivy does, but it has leaves that grow in 5s, not 3s. So don't be afraid of this thing. If it grows in 5s, you can touch it without any bad reaction. All right, so this is the part where you could stop and go out and do your homework. You've learned how to identify the trees in the 3 steps. You've looked at different various types of tree species that you might find, but the part 3 is now just for fun, and basically it's just Mr. and Miss K's outdoor adventure. The following slides will be photos of us finding various things on a walk with the dogs, so if you're still sticking around, enjoy! So the first thing that we came across was in our own yard. It's a flowering dogwood, also called Cornus florida. It's got alternate branching. You can see the branches have these nice little V shapes here where they come out at opposite places. I've drawn little V's on there just now. Right now they're blooming. They've got these really pretty white blooms on them. Our tree's really small. It's only like 6 feet tall. And then here's an image of our puppers with the dogwood tree. Next thing we ended up finding, also in our yard, is a river birch, or Betula nigra. Alright, so if you look at the branching, it's alternate. I'll draw them in to make them more obvious for you. You could see the alternate branching there. It's got very toothed leaves, and it's got paper-like light-colored bark, and you can see Mr. K right there pointing to its very distinctive bark. On an ash tree in our neighborhood, it's called Fraxinus Pensylvanica. If you looked at the branching of the tree, you would notice that it is opposite branching, so I'll draw those in now. So you see the little twigs coming off the main branch at opposite points. Alright, so that's a big red flag. Not red flag, but it's a big flag that kind of says, okay, this is the few trees that fall within our opposite group, all right? Then I have the leaf in my hand. That is one entire leaf with 7 little leaflets on it. Then the next tree we came across was a sycamore tree, also known as Platanus occidentalis. I'm leaning against the base of the tree. You could see that the bark looks sick or peely. Very distinctive for that tree. Right now it doesn't really have many leaves on it, and I couldn't reach those branches anyways, but you could easily identify this tree without even looking at the leaves. Then we ran into a Bradford or Cleveland pear. Mr. K is making a very I hate this tree look. Because it is the worst tree, it gives Mr. K and I allergies when it blooms. It's got like that generic normal tree leaf shape. It's alternate branching. It's got lots of flowers on it in the spring. It is non-native and invasive. Its seeds are just really successful at becoming saplings and growing into trees, and they are really good at outcompeting native plants for resources, so that's why they suck, other than the allergies part. But they're very common for a front yard tree in suburbs and such, because they really do have a pretty bloom in the spring, but the flowers honestly smell bad. But that's just our opinion. We came across all 3 maple trees within our neighborhood. The first of which being the sugar maple on the far left. You could see that this leaf does not have any teeth on its margins. It's got very smooth, soft margins. It's also got this U-shaped sinus. This is a very good leaf because it shows that nice U-shaped sinus along its teethless margins. All right, this leaf looks like the leaf on the Canadian flag. Syrup is sweet. It's a sugar maple. Alternatively, we have a red maple on the far right of this. The red maple does have teeth along its margins. You can see the teeth there. It's got a very distinct V-shaped sinus. so not U-shaped, but V-shaped sinus, and then the teeth along the margins flag it for red maple. And then we've got the silver maple. This is an image of a silver maple right before Tesla literally ate the leaf. A leaf was harmed in the making of this image. I apologize. But this is a pretty stereotypical silver maple. It's got the very deep sinuses. It's got teeth on the margins. Okay. And then if I were to have thought about taking a picture of the underside of the leaf, it would have that silver sheen on it, labeling it as a silver maple. So these are just three very common maple varieties that you would see in people's yards and as well in the wild. But yeah. Then we ran into some wildflowers, so just kind of a deviation off of our trees thing. So some things, if you go into more natural areas on your walk, you might run into. So if you're interested in knowing what they're called, you can maybe compare them to this slide. You might run into wood poppies. So these are little beautiful yellow 4-petaled flowers. They've got pretty distinct, weird-looking leaves, but it's just a general poppy, and it's called a wood poppy. Then in the middle, we've got trilliums, and trilliums have sets of 3 leaves, and then like a really weird-looking flower in the middle. So the flower might be a deep maroon color, it might be a red color, it might be a white color, depending on the trillium variety. Then we have butterweed. This is all over the place, sides of the roads, growing in cornfields right now. It starts as a very short, squat plant, and then as soon as it gets enough light, it grows up to be like 2.5, 3 feet tall, and it's got like just these little cluster, like a fan of flowers at the top of its head, and it's like little daisy-like flowers, and that's called butterweed. Some more wildflowers that we ran into. We ran into wild phlox. It's a very distinctive, weird-looking flower. You might see these in gardens. There are a lot of phlox varieties that people purposefully plant in their gardens. Then we ran into Jack in the Pulpit. So Jack in the Pulpit is a really cool plant. It's a pitcher plant. It's actually a carnivorous plant. All right, so what happens with this is it's got this really unique flower shape that's kind of a pitcher shape, and then it's got this little guy sticking up here, and that is Jack. All right, and Jack is covered with like a sticky, sweet-smelling, like fluid on it that attracts bugs to it. All right, so bugs are going to smell that kind of like nectar, and they're going to be attracted to it. And sometimes when they're going there to lick the sticky, sweet-smelling stuff, they'll fall into this pitcher. All right, and this pitcher tends to have a little bit of watery fluid on the bottom of it. So when the bug falls in, the bug ends up drowning. Well, that watery fluid also contains digestive enzymes. So when the bug falls in and drowns, the digestive enzymes will break that apart, and then the plant will gain nutrients from grabbing from whatever kind of bug died in it. So Jack in the Pulpit is Jack sitting within his pulpit. He's attracting bugs and other things. Sometimes those bugs fall in and die, and then the plant gets free nutrients from that instead of needing to get those nutrients from the ground. Pretty cool. Then we have wild columbine. It's got a very distinct leaf as well. Kind of cool looking leaf. And a very pretty, like, light pinkish purple flower. And it comes in sets of 5 petals. Kinds of landscaping flowers, like in our own yard, we have salvia, and it's got like these distinct, like, crinkly looking leaves with these pretty purple flower spikes going up on them. Azalea, they're just kind of bushes that come in all sorts of shapes, sizes, and colors with various different kinds of flowers on them as well. We have dianthus and petunias and violets. So all sorts of different things that you could just find within your yard or within a neighbor's yard or, within, your apartment ledges, things like that. So ultimately, this is the end of the PowerPoint, and this is a picture of Mr. K using Sherlock as a horse. We've got 2 70-ish pound dogs, so it's kind of easy to make them into horses, but no, we're not actually riding them. But anyways, we hope you enjoy going outside and taking some pictures or selfies. Nature is fun, and it can be a really good way to relax. We do truly miss seeing you all and interacting with you, and we look forward to the day where we could be in the same building together. And we just wanted to say thank you for being awesome, and we look forward to just the next few days we have left for you, or with you. So sincerely from Mr. K, Miss K, and Mrs. Foy. Alright, so we wanted to have pictures with Miss Foy in here, and we apologize for lack of photos of her. She meant to take some pictures to send to us to include with this, but was not feeling well on the day this presentation was made, so unfortunately she got left out, but we wanted to add her. But yeah, so just let us know if you have any questions. Have a good time with the assignment. We hope you enjoyed this lesson, and I hope you learned something. All right, see you guys next time. Bye.